seeking freedom in a revolution, oh, if you're seeking freedom, you won't find it there. For once the guns stop blazing, you'll find it amazing how the world can drag on just as before.
If you're seeking freedom in a marble mansion,
oh, if you're seeking freedom, you won't find it there.
For even when it's sunny, you'll be counting money, keeping up that showcase, your face lined with care.
And if you're seeking freedom on a throne of power,
oh, if you're seeking freedom, you won't find it there.
For though men all obey you, what if they betray you? Tense you'll be and waiting for foes everywhere.
But if you're seeking freedom, cast away desires.
Why barter like a beggar, you've wealth everywhere?
For never can you buy it, grasp and you'll deny it. Freedom can't be hoarded, it's free as the air. And if you're seeking freedom, seek it in the mountains. Got sunlight on your shoulder, the wind in your hair. For there's no one can hold you, boss about or mold you. Once your heart is free, you'll be king everywhere. For there's no one can hold you, boss about or mold you. Once your heart is free, you'll be king everywhere.
The words of this song, and you may join us, are "Give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say." You'll catch on.
Give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say. Give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say. Give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say. Give me a light to light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say. Truth is the light, so light my way. Truth is the light, so light my way. Truth is the light, so light my way. Truth is the light, so wise my way. Truth is the light, so light my way. Truth is the light, so wise men say. Life is a dream, time like a stream, carries our burdens away. Never despair, joys everywhere. Love can befriend you today. Free from all care, like birds on the air, soar above green. to draw nigh.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I want to thank Sri Kartikayanji, who's been a very dear friend, not only of Devaji and me, but most especially of Ananda through Swami Kriyananda. As he said, Swami Kriyananda called him a brother, and to us he feels like a brother, father, uncle. I want to also bow to the great lineage that we have, especially Mahavatar Babaji, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, and especially to our own spiritual father, teacher, friend, and guide, Swami Kriyanandaji. All that we have comes from them. All that we can share comes from God that has been channeled through them. We want to talk this evening a bit about Kriya Yoga. And Kriya Yoga is a number of things. First of all, it is a technique of meditation. In our path, in our lineage, we practice the Kriya Yoga that Mahavatar Babaji taught to Lahiri Mahashaya. I'll talk a little bit about the history of that, but I first want to just talk about what Kriya Yoga is. Kriya Yoga is a technique. Primarily, it's a technique by which we can control our own internal energies. And by the control of our own internal energies, we can control how we live in this world. And so Kriya, at its root, the word means action. In the great book, Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yoganandaji simply said that Kriya means action. But it's more, there's a particular kind of action. The Sanskrit root has two variations. One is karma, and karma means action that is going to have results, because karma is an action that's done with the thought of ego behind it, generally with something that is done in order to receive something back. And as long as we're tied to the post of ego, whatever we do, good, bad, or indifferent, it's half of a circle, and that circle will return to us in the form of our own karma. But there's another kind of action, and that is the action connoted by Kriya, the other root of the Sanskrit word, and that is action which frees us. Action which does not result in karma coming back to us. In fact, action that releases us from karma. One of the great results of the practice of Kriya Yoga is that it actually burns up and releases those seeds of karma, the seeds of the samskars that reside within each of us. It releases us from that so that we can be free. But Kriya also is more than just a simple technique or a technique of meditation. Kriya is a whole way of life. It's how we live in this world. If we do Kriya in meditation in order to free us from karma, in order to free us from the need for birth and rebirth, to free us from the wheel of incarnations, then we must also live in this life in such a way that our actions are Kriya-like, that they too free us from the need to reincarnate, so that our very actions themselves become a part of the way that we are released from the bondage of Maya or the bondage of delusion. And this is what Mahavatar Babaji called his great disciple, Lahiri Mahashaya, to him in 1861. Many of you know this story, but there are probably many of you also that don't. Lahiri Mahashaya was a young man at that time, and he was an employee as an accountant, he was an employee of the British. And he was posted to Ranikat. And when he got the posting there, he found out that there was not much for him to do, that he had a lot of time, idle time on his hands. So he began walking in the local hillsides. And one day as he was walking, he heard a voice calling to him, "Lahiri, come, Lahiri, come." And he was curious, of course, so he followed and he walked farther into the hills. And finally, he came upon this young man, who we all know later, because we know the end of the story, was Babaji. And Babaji said to him, "Don't you remember me?" And Lahiri said, "No, I don't remember you." And then he said, "I have to get back. I have my job. It's getting dark." And Babaji said to him, "Lahiri, the job was made for you, not you for the job." It's a kind of a play on something that's in the Bible. And so he said, "I created that job in order to have you posted here so that you could come here for this momentous meeting." And then Babaji tapped Lahiri on the chest. And he went into unbroken samadhi for 7 days. And at the time of that, when he came out of that long samadhi, of course he remembered his past lives, his time with Babaji. He remembered because they were at a cave. He remembered the cave. He remembered the seat, his asan. He remembered the little begging bowl that he had. And he lived in that great expanded state for some week. And when he came out, 2 things happened. One, he was initiated into this great technique of Kriya Yoga. But secondly, he begged Babaji, "Oh, please, I don't want to have to go back into that world." He normally lived in Benares, Varanasi. "I don't want to have to go back and resume that life." He had a wife, he had some children, he had a job. But Babaji told him, "There is a spiritual reason that you were not drawn here until you had a wife and children and modest responsibilities." He said, "It is a change of ages now. In past ages, the sacred technique of Kriya Yoga was not given very widely, and it has almost been lost. As Paramahansa Yoganandaji says in the autobiography, it was lost through man's indifference and priestly secrecy. And so in the darker age of Kali Yuga, this sacred technique was not completely lost, but it was buried. And then at this meeting, for all of us, Lahiri was given this sacred technique, and he was told to share it. And Babaji said, "Share this technique only with those people who have renounced the world and are highly advanced." And Lahiri Mahashaya, in behalf of all of us, said, "But Master, there are many sincere devotees who are yearning to be free, but they're still in the world and they can't renounce the world and leave. Can I not share this technique with sincere men and women everywhere?" And Babaji said, "God has spoken through you. Go ahead and share this technique with others." And so this technique now can be given not to everyone because it takes preparation. Because it's a technique of meditation, we must have a life that includes meditation in order to practice this technique. But the technique can now be given to those people, those of us who are sincere. I was initiated by my great, great teacher and spiritual father, Swami Kriyananda, just a little over 45 years ago, and have practiced this technique daily since that time, and I can attest to the fact that it is a powerful, powerful technique for changing consciousness. But why did Babaji change now at this time? As I said, this took place in 1861. But Sri Yukteswar, who was a great mathematician, an avatar, a great mathematician and also an astrologer, said that there is a change of ages. We all know about the yugas, but what Sri Yukteswar said is that Kali Yuga, there was a descending cycle, and Kali Yuga came down, and at the low point of Kali Yuga, he said that that entire cycle takes 24,000 years. And so from the high age of Satya Yuga, it has come down to the very bottom when man's consciousness on this planet is the darkest, when we can't understand anything except what we can see and feel and grasp, where it's an age of form and a very dark time. That low point was about 500 AD. And Kali Yuga lasts 1,200 years. And so coming forward in 1700, we began the change over from the old age of Kali Yuga to what we're calling the modern age, the age of Dwapara Yuga. And we all know from looking at history that there is a great change that came into the world around that time. First of all came the Industrial Revolution, then came the Scientific Revolution, and then came, I suppose we could call it the iPhone Revolution. And we all know that there's a change because the Dwapara Yuga is going to do away with time, with space, and it's going to shrink this world and make it seem like one world. And that is already happening. It is the age of energy. And so from a time that was 1,000 years ago, which was the age of form and darkness, we've come into the beginnings of the dawn of consciousness. And the electronic age that we're all a part of is changing consciousness. We can have a cell phone in our pocket, and that cell phone can ring, and we won't know whether it's someone who's out in the hallway calling us. I hope you've all turned your cell phones off, by the way, your mobiles off. I have to tell you a funny story. Swami Kriyanandaji was giving a talk in Gurgaon a few years ago, and naturally, as we always do, he asked everyone, or there was an announcement asking everyone to turn their mobiles off. And Swamiji was in the middle of a talk, and a mobile rang. And he said, "Could you please turn it off? Could answer it, turn it off, please?" And it kept ringing and kept ringing. And he said, "Please, we've asked you to turn your mobiles off." And then he looked down, it was his own mobile in his pocket, and he took it out and he had a big laugh. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He had a big laugh. Someone was calling him from America. But the point here is, when that mobile rang, he didn't know whether it was someone in the audience calling him, someone in Gurgaon, someone at the ashram calling him, or someone in America calling him. The world had shrunk, at least in terms of that experience with the mobile. Our son told us a joke, but simply having a mobile, having this wonderful technology, does not mean that we use it wisely. Our friend told us a joke. He said, where a man from the past in the 1900s is suddenly transported into the future, and he comes into present day age, and he sees a man with a smartphone. And he says, "What is that?" And the man said, "Well, this is a device that connects me with all the recorded wisdom of mankind from the beginning of history." And the man from the past says, "That's amazing. What do you do with that?" And the fellow says, "Well, mainly I look at pictures of cats and argue with people that I don't know." And so we might have the technology, but the consciousness has not grown very much in this present age. In fact, we have wonderful, wonderful technology that is helping us explore the world outside of ourselves. Technology primarily because this is an age of energy. We have technology that helps us explore that. And so we can send a huge telescope up, the Hubble telescope, up into space, and it can take digital pictures and beam those back, and we can all see galaxies that we didn't know that existed. We can see that space is full of light, that if you take the darkest part of the sky where it appears that there is absolutely nothing, no stars, no light, take a piece of that as big as your little fingernail, and if you shine a powerful telescope on it, you see galaxy upon galaxy upon galaxy. So this world, this universe is filled with stars, filled with galaxies, filled with light. And through the beauty of science, we can begin to see them. We can now, in space, we can take a picture of the planet Earth. We've all seen that. The beautiful blue and white marble that is our planet, the home to all of humanity. And through science we can see that. But as we grow closer to that planet, we also see that we haven't evolved very much from those cavemen who were trying to beat each other with sticks and stones. We still have a world in conflict. We have people fighting against people. We have races fighting against races, nations, religions, all in conflict. And so we may have the outward technology, but we also need now to find an inner technology. We've explored the universe outside of ourselves, but unless we explore the universe inside of ourselves and begin to make those changes, the world of technology will not be a blessing, but will be a curse. And what is the scientific methodology of exploring the universe within? In this age, it is the science of Kriya Yoga. And why do I say that? Is it just some kind of a belief system that, oh, this is a wonderful path, it's done me so much good, and therefore I want to praise it? No. Kriya Yoga is not a religion. It's not a belief system. It is a means by which we can scientifically explore the universe that lies within ourselves. And that is the crying need of our age, much more than a new smartphone, much more than a more powerful telescope or microscope. We have to begin to explore our own nature within, and in that nature we must find the divinity that resides within us and that therefore resides within everyone else. If we can find the light that shines in the darkest part of the universe, why can't we find the light that shines within each of us? And when we find that light, we find that that same light shines and unites every human being on this planet. And it's that search that we need to carry on. And it's that search, it's the blessing, it's the grace of Babaji and the modern age. And I do not want to be sectarian. I do not want to say that this beautiful ray of light came only through Babaji, only through our lineage, only through these great masters. It is God beyond any religion, beyond any single master, beyond any group of people. It is God that is beginning to enlighten the world. So now why do I say that Kriya Yoga is such a precious technique? In the autobiography of a yogi, Paramahansa Yoganandaji quoted his Sanskrit teacher as saying that Kriya Yoga is the most effective technique for self-realization by self-effort ever given to mankind. So why? Is that a sectarian statement? That our method is better than your method? No. The reason is that Kriya Yoga works on our own central nervous system. It isn't an outward technique. It isn't an outward practice. That outward practices are really symbols of this inward technique of awakening inside of ourself. So when we do an arati and we offer up the light in the candle to the great masters, what that is not only an outward ceremony, an outward observance, but it is symbolic of us offering up our life force that is within us into the image of God that resides within each one of us, that resides in you and resides in me. And so that life force is offered up. But there's a particularly scientific way that we can do that most effectively. And that's simply what Kriya is. It is the scientific method of offering up our life force to the higher centers, and especially to the universal light that resides at the spiritual eye. As we go within, we discover that just as the telescope can find light in the darkest spaces, so inwardly the same process happens. When Yoganandaji was a young boy, he was only 6 or 7 at that time, he got this great sense within. He wanted to know more, and he was sitting on his bed, and he said there came over him a yearning to know, and he sent out this prayer. He said, "What lies behind the darkness of closed eyelids?" And this prayer, and then he went into a deep state of meditation. And as he went into this deep state of meditation, trying to see what lies behind the closed eyes, the darkness of closed eyes, there was no longer darkness there. But he began to see little figures. And as they grew, he saw that there were yogis meditating. And in his mind's voice, he asked, "Who are you? Who are you?" And they said, "We are the Himalayan yogis." And it awakened in him a lifelong desire to be a yogi, to go to the Himalayas, to be one with them. But then he went even deeper, because those figures vanished, and in their place came a blazing light within. And Yoganandaji, Mukunda he was at that young age, he said, "Who are you? What are you?" And the voice resounded, "I am Ishwara. I am light." And he said that he was given a permanent blessing that lasted his entire life through that experience. Now that experience that he had as a young boy of 6, that experience ultimately will come to each one of us. Ultimately, we will not only see the light of creation, not only outside, but within. We will see that light within ourselves, and ultimately it is our destiny to become one with that light, because each of us comes from that light. And it is our destiny to return back into unity with that light. We will never rest, we will never be happy until that process completes itself. I don't need to give a lecture to convince you to be on the spiritual path. Yoganandaji said everyone in the world is on the spiritual path. Everyone, our soul, in our innermost soul, we are yearning to return to that which we came from. We are yearning to return to God. We are yearning to return to the light. Yoganandaji said that our bodies are nothing but condensed light. And in our soul, we want to return to that. The great saint Anandamoy Ma put it this way, and I love this quote. She said, "The natural food of the mind is joy. And until we can feast on that joy, we will always be hungry." And so our own hunger drives us along, drives us to try this and try that, because the things that we try will give us some happiness. But as we find that happiness, it also flees before us, and we want something deeper and more permanent. And that deeper and more permanent happiness is the joy of our own souls. And so we will be driven on until we find that joy by our own hunger for happiness. When Paramahansa Yoganandaji wrote his first book, it was called The Science of Religion. And the central thesis of that was that everyone in the world is motivated by the same motivation. Everyone. And that motivation is that every one of us desires happiness, and we seek to avoid pain. It's how we define happiness or pain that entangles us or frees us in the world. I have to tell a joke that just occurred to me, and I hope it translates well. But a man was walking along, and he heard a little voice saying, "Help me, help me." And so he stopped and he looked down, and there was a little frog looking up at him, eyes gleaming. And so he reached down and he picked up the frog, and this little frog said, "Help me, help me. I am a princess, and I've been cursed to take on the form of a frog. And if you kiss me, I'll turn into a princess, and you can be my husband, and you'll inherit the kingdom." And the man looked, and he put the frog in his pocket and continued walking. And after a little while, the frog said again, "Didn't you hear me? I'm a princess. Kiss me, and you'll be a great prince." And the man looked down and said, "You know, I think I would rather have a talking frog." And so certain things that seem obviously good do nothing but entangle us in the world. He must have been a sage or a hermit or something, because he could see through not wanting the entanglement of having a kingdom that he had to rule. But so certain things that we seek after, certain ways that we seek for happiness, end up entangling us, and others free us. That's why there are those two roots of the same Sanskrit word. One action that entangles, the other action that frees. And so Kriya Yoga is that action that frees us. It works primarily and simply by helping us in deep meditation to withdraw the energy that goes out through the senses and entangles us outwardly, attracts us to the world, and makes us think that our happiness lies outside of ourselves. We must withdraw that energy, that life force, and lift it up to the higher centers. And Kriya Yoga, by revolving under conscious will, by revolving energy around the spine, creates an inward magnet. The real altar that we worship, that we hold up the arati candle to, is the altar of our own central nervous system. And that's why Kriya Yoga is effective, because it works not outwardly, it works on our own central nervous system. And in this way, by resolving and withdrawing the energy and lifting it up, we indeed reverse the process that spreads us out and makes us think that our happiness, the world, things that we want, all lie outside. And as we draw in, Kriya helps us to awaken into our own inner universe. And it also helps us to control the life force and to control the reactive process. And so the life of a Kriya Yogi gradually becomes calmer, gradually becomes more loving, more joyful, because we aren't drawn into a reactive process with the world around us. I'll end just by saying how filled with light and joy and love Swami Kriyanandaji was. He was the kindest person, the most joyful, the most uplifted person that certainly that I have ever met or been around for any length of time. I'll tell you just one story about the kindness that he had for everyone. Nearly his last trip to India, as Sri Kartikayanji was saying, as he grew older, his body grew very frail. And so the long international flights, they were very difficult on him. And he had arrived in Gurgaon, our ashram there, from a long international flight, and his body was weary. And one of the residents there suggested that he get a massage. There's a young man who would come and give massages, and he was very good and felt that this could be helpful. So Swamiji said, yes, I think that would be helpful. And so this young man came, and he had Swamiji lay down on the bed, and he gave him a very nice massage. But at the end of it, Swamiji said, wouldn't it be better if you had a massage table so that your clients didn't have to lay down on the bed? And this young man said, well, of course that would be better, but they're very expensive, and I have a wife and 2 children, and I'm barely eking out enough money now doing my work to support my family. Now, this is the first time Swamiji had ever met that young man. And he said, go out and find a massage table. I'll buy it for you. And the young man said, oh, no, sir. They're quite expensive. And Swamiji said, that doesn't matter. Go out and find one, and I'll buy it for you. And so the young man came back the next day. Swamiji asked, how much will they cost? And the young man said, I'm not sure. I think maybe as much as 10,000 rupees. And then the young man came back the next day, and he said, oh, sir, when I went to look, actually they cost 25,000 rupees. They're much too expensive. And I thank you for your offer. And Swamiji said, no, go out and buy that table. It will help you. And this young man could barely believe his eyes. He had only met Swamiji the day before. And he went, and as he was leaving the ashram, now this is the most beautiful part. It is not the money, it is not the kindness, it is not the massage table. This is the beautiful part. As he was leaving the ashram, he told one of our members there, he said, I was an orphan. And when I grew up, I never knew my father. I never knew who he was. And all my life, I have longed for the love of a father and never found it. And today, I found the love of a father. Now that's the unifying effect of a life of Kriya Yoga and a life lived in God. That we see everyone as our own family. More than our own family, we see everyone as our own self. And when we find the light that is within us, we find that light shining, blazing forth in the form of everyone else. And when we can find that inner science, that inner technology, then this beautiful earth that looks united from space will in fact become united into one planet, living a life of love and joy And we are very grateful that Ananda Sangha can do its little part to help in that process.
Good evening, everyone. I'll also share a few words with you this evening. Our topic, as you have heard and repeatedly, is Kriya Yoga for the modern age. And I know we so enjoy the consciousness of India that loves to look at subtle meanings of words and multi-levels of interpretation. And so Kriya Yoga for the modern age. What are the needs of the modern age that Kriya Yoga fulfills? I think we all look around us and we see this is not an easy time for humanity. First of all, whether we're young or old, I think we have to accept that values are shifting. It is hard to find what is real, what is true, those values that knit society together and hold us together as families, as nations, as a world. Well, what Kriya Yoga brings to answer this need for true values at this time is it links us with the ancient wisdom of yoga, of Vedantic thinking, that this great line of masters, and primarily Babaji, the Mahavatar, the deathless, eternal yogi living in the Himalayas. Yoganandaji tells us that he and the Himalayan yogis are guiding the destiny of humanity. And they have brought these teachings now at a time to give us roots, to anchor us in Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion, not east or west, not divisive, not thinking, well, this will work here, not there. Swami Kriyanandaji, our teacher, said, Sanatana Dharma is as true on our planet as the farthest reaches of infinity, because it is the fabric of which creation is based, the foundation of values, of seeing the material world as only a facade behind which there is the reality and the truth of God. So Kriya Yoga links us to this ancient wisdom. It links us to values, and it reminds us that without God at the center of our life, no matter what we acquire in this world, no matter where we go and how we rise in the world, none of it is important if we don't have a central value system that is based on eternal truth, eternal verities, as Yoganandaji says in the first sentence of Autobiography of a Yogi. We also need Kriya Yoga today. We see the world divided with dogmatism and sectarianism in religion. We need to find a way that it's like pearls on a thread, as it says in the Gita, that thread that links all religions, that links all beliefs and practices. And there's an expression in English in America, that refers to very dogmatic thinking. And it's called dyed in the wool, someone who is just seeped in a dogmatic approach. And our Guruji, Yoganandaji, said, we must dye them in the wool of their own experience of God through the practice of Kriya Yoga. So Kriya Yoga really, in all mystical traditions, every religion you find in the world, they talk about the ability to withdraw your awareness and experience God within. This is in Judaism, in Christianity, in the Muslim religion, Buddhism, Hinduism, throughout them all. And we find that Kriya Yoga enables us to have that unified experience that is at the core of all religion. And so it answers the need of our times. Kriya Yoga for our age, because we will destroy each other if all we see is the differences. I must say, coming from America and looking at the politics, we hang our heads in shame at the divisiveness and the self-interest that we see there. And the only way out of that is not through one political party dominating another and blocking the efforts, or one religion dominating another, but to see the commonality. We are all seeking the same thing, but we must experience this within ourselves through the practice of techniques of yoga, Kriya Yoga, that help us to realize a unity with a greater reality. Another thing that Kriya Yoga brings to our modern age, because as Jyotishi was saying, this is a time of energy. It is not a time of passivity where we say, oh, the priest will do this for me. Oh, the rituals will do this for me. We need to use our own energy. And Kriya Yoga changes the pattern of how we approach a spiritual life. And it makes us active participants because it enables us to get control over the flow of our own inner energy. I have lived in and practiced Kriya Yoga and lived with devotees, disciples who are practicing it, and I have seen people who have been able to accomplish remarkable things, healing themselves of diseases, healing other people of diseases, accomplishing great works, not the least of which Swami Kriyanandaji, writing 150 books, as Sri Kartikayanji mentioned, starting 9 communities around the world. And what gave him that power? Yoganandaji said, our own but God-given power. And Kriya helps us to tune into that. It helps us to move beyond being passive, perhaps even thinking of ourselves as victims in this world. Oh, well, how can I ever rise above my station? My mother was this, my father was this. But if we say, I can do anything when so I think. Yogananda has a wonderful book called Scientific Healing Affirmations. And I encourage you to get that and read that, where he uses simple mental formulas that you repeat over and over. They're in English. But they engage the mind, they release blocks, and you can feel within you the release of energy through the practice of Kriya Yoga. So to look at our lives and say, it's not enough to think God will do it all for me. I have to do my part. Yoganandaji, our Gurudeva, said that liberation is 25% the effort of the devotee. 25%. He liked to talk in mathematical terms because in America, where he mainly taught, they like that. 25% the effort of the devotee. 25% the intercession of the guru on the devotee's behalf. And 50% the grace of God. But, he added, that 25% that is our part must be 100% of what we have to give. So Kriya Yoga awakens our awareness of that inner flow of energy within us. It makes it dynamic to our awareness, and then we can bring it to bear on everything that we do. Our beloved teacher, we can't avoid saying this, his name that he chose, his monastic name, was Kriyanandaji. And why did he choose that name? Because Kriya means action, and it's also a technique of meditation. So it's joy through meditation, joy through action. And this is what his life was, meditation and action. And so we need a way to become actively involved with our spiritual life, not just passive, not saying, I lit the candle, the rest is up to you, God. Kriyananda wrote a book towards the very end of his life, last year in fact, and it's just about to come out, called Cooperating with Grace, meaning we can't just expect the grace to do it all. We have to do our part. And so to change from seeing the spiritual life from passive, where we kind of are an observer, to be an active participant in our own process of transformation. then when we look at the world around us, look at the news, listen to the radio, it is not a safe place to live. It is a time of tremendous upheaval, the weather patterns, violence, guns, terrorism. It's hard to find a sense of security in this world. And that is, for devotees, that is good news. Because as long as we're thinking this world will make us secure, we will always live on the edge of anxiety. I got an email this morning from two dear friends of mine. It was we were writing each other, and these were girlfriends of mine when I was in high school. And if most of you know, today is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And we were young then. We were 16 years old. And my girlfriend said, remember, we shared that experience together, and we were sharing what it did for us. And I said, for me, that was a turning point in my life, because I realized Kennedy brought to the American youth at that time hope and a sense of mission, pride in our country. And it was all gone in a moment with an assassin's bullet. And I wrote to my friends, I said, I'm in India now. I'm sharing the teachings of my great Guru Deva. But that time when Kennedy was assassinated, it changed my consciousness, because I realized I could never find security in this world of shifting sands. And so for all of us, Kriya Yoga helps us to overcome the anxiety, the fear. It says in the Gita, even a little practice of this inward religion, which is a direct reference to Kriya Yoga, even a little practice of this inward religion will free you from dire fears and colossal sufferings. And finally, I will close with one last gift that Kriya Yoga brings to us in this modern age. And in a way, I hesitate to call it modern because it doesn't seem very modern. It seems quite primitive, but here we are. Let's make the best of it. And that's why these great masters came, to help us make the best of the times in which we live. And this last aspect, benefit, that Kriya Yoga brings to the modern age. We live in a time where we become numbers, become digital printouts on a database. We have lost the sense of our own individual value. And I think in part that's why social media is so popular, Facebook and Twitter and all that, because it's, oh, I had a cup of coffee today. People are trying to assert their own sense of individuality. Well, we will never find fulfillment in that way. The only way we find our true value is when we discover our unity with God. We find our own divinity. And then we can say, yes, I have value not in and of myself, but because I am a spark of the infinite. God planted his light within me, and it is because of that light that this life has any value. And through the practice of Kriya Yoga, we awaken that light, we see that light, we merge with that light. In Yogananda's beautiful mystical poem, Samadhi, he says, I, the cosmic sea, watch the little ego floating in me. And this is where we find our true value, the little ego floating in the cosmic sea of God's peace, of his love, of his joy. And so Kriya Yoga is for the modern age. It is from ancient times, but it will guide us into a future where humanity awakens to its own unity with God.